Okay, so we'll start by setting our motivation, thinking this is the highest of the Mahayana teachings, the profound view of emptiness. So based on that, we need a profound motivation. And for that, we need a profound motivation of bodhicitta. So we think we're going to receive listen to the teachings and contemplate the meaning and do meditation with the intention of liberating all sentient beings. And with that, we also start with prayers. So for that, we will visualize the teacher Shakyamuni Buddha in the space in front of us, and thinking we're surrounded by all sentient beings. Trying to get the sort of standard visualization we do, the Buddha in front, then surrounded by the Pandits in Nalanda, the Mahasiddhas, and the sort of lineage lamas above, the method and wisdom lineages. Wisdom to Shakyamuni Buddha's left, with Manjushri surrounded by like Nagarjuna, Chandakirti, Shantideva, and then to his right is Maitreya, surrounded by the likes of Arya Sangha and the masters of the method lineage. And then below the Buddhas of three times, Yidams, Dakas, Dakinis, Dharma protectors, Bodhisattvas, and so on. And thinking we're leading all sentient beings who are surrounding us in the form of humans in this prayer, we'll recite the prayers. Guru, teacher, Bhagavan, Tathagata, art, perfect, complete Buddha, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sugata, and over the world, supreme guide of beings to be subdued, teacher of gods and humans, to you, Buddha Bhagavan, glorious conqueror Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offering, and go for refuge. Guru, teacher, Bhagavan, Tathagata, art, perfectly complete Buddha, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sugata, and over the world, supreme guide of beings to be subdued, teacher of gods and humans, to you, Buddha Bhagavan, glorious conqueror Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. Guru, teacher, Bhagavan, Tathagata, art, perfect, complete Buddha, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sugata, and over the world, supreme guide of beings to be subdued, teacher of gods and humans, to you, Buddha Bhagavan, glorious conqueror Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. In the mantra Shakyamuni Buddha three times. Tayasa Muni Muni Maha Muni Maha Muni Soha. Tayasa Muni Muni Maha Muni Maha Muni Soha. Tayasa Muni Muni Maha Muni Maha Muni Soha. And then today, because we're covering emptiness, we have the better to recite the entire Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. So we start with the short phrase as the introduction. Ma sam sho mi sha pa wo shi ma ki mi ga ga ping no wo ni so so gang vi ye shi cho yo wa du sung gia wa yom la sha tse lo. I prostrate to the three noble Vesuvian ones. Looks like here at one time the Bhagavan was dwelling on a massive vulture's mountain in Rajagir, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Ayurveda looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those five aggregates also empty of inherent nature. Then through the power of the Buddha, the venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Ayurveda: how should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Ayurveda said this to the venerable Shariputra: Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound professional wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those five aggregates, also as empty inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is nothing than form, form is also nothing than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra likewise, all phenomena are emptiness without characteristic. Unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Sharaputra, therefore, in emptiness, there's no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, and no consciousness. No eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomena. There's no I element and so on, up to include no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance and no extinction of ignorance and so on, up to and including no aging and death and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Sharaputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, mind without obscuration, without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly completely awake to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly passes all suffering should be known as truth and not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared. Tayatha gati gati paragati parasamgati bodhisoha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Aya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage. It is like that. It is like that one should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you have indicated. Even Tathagata rejoice. The Bhagavan having thus spoken, the Venerable Shavariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Aya Avalokiteshvara, and those surrounding their entirety, along with the worlds of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. And then the short mandala offering. Oh, so she ho he you she me to bling ni de yen body Sangye Shindu Mikse Uwa Dokuna Doshina Chopasho Idangu Anamandala Kamnirtayami and leading everyone in chant of refuge. Sangye Chodam Soni Chodam La Chanchu Padu Dani Kapsuchi Dagi Chonye Gipe Sonangi Drola Pinchir Sangye Drupa Sho Sangye Chodam Soni Chodam La Chanchu Padu Dani Kapsuchi Dagi Chonye Gipe Sonangi Chola Pinchu Sangye Rupo Sho Sangye Chodam Soni Chodam La Chanchu Patu Dagi Kapsu Chi Dagi Chonye Gipe Sonami Chola Pinchu Sangye Rupo Sho. So today we're up to the final sort of topic of the Lam Room, the teaching of emptiness. So this is based on the verse in the Foundation of All Good Qualities. It says, once I've pacified distraction to wrong objects and correctly analysed the meaning of reality, please bless me to generate quickly within my mind stream the unified path of calm abiding and special insight. So it starts off by saying this pacifying distractions to wrong objects refers to having the sort of attainment of calm abiding or its similarity or its similitude. So we're saying you don't necessarily, to realize emptiness, you don't need the realization of calm abiding, but you need the point right up to that. So, whether it's realizing calm abiding or just the preliminary stages of that, it doesn't matter. But you need to be able to have sort of one-pointed concentration to realize emptiness. And from there, it says then the understanding the meaning of reality, and that refers to the meaning of emptiness. So we'll take the Praise of Dependent Relativity by Tsongkhapa. There's the sort of starting couple of verses today. And there's a quote he wrote that says, "Whatever troubles this world, their root is ignorance. You taught the insight that reverses it, dependent relativity. How then would the intelligent not comprehend this pathway of dependent relativity to your teaching's very core? In such a case, then, no one could find anything more wonderful to praise you than setting forth dependently arising law. What on conditions does rely is empty of inherent being. What way of fine instruction more is down in this utterance?" So these kind of verses really exemplify why we need to understand emptiness and its essential meaning. So we're saying the troubles of the world, the suffering, the root of all suffering and samsara is ignorance. And ignorance of what? It's not just the common sort of ignorance, not knowing in terms of maybe not knowing where somewhere is or not knowing a fact. But we're talking about the ignorance of the way things exist. The grasping at inherent existence or grasping at a self of any of the varieties. So then, verse 5, where it says, what on conditions does rely is empty of inherent being. So this is the summary of emptiness that you need to understand is dependent to relatives or dependent to arising. And that's the being explained here by Tsongkhapa from the Prasangika, the consequent school view, where all phenomena are empty of inherent existence because they're dependently arisen. So for this, we'll go through the four schools and how they view selflessness and how you can perhaps meditate on this. And then we'll see where we're at. But I think we'll maybe have to do a sort of guided meditation based on the view of emptiness at another time. So for now, we'll start off with the four schools. And we'll start with the Great Exposition School, or the Vaibhashika School. So they're defined as a definition of the proponent of the Great Exposition is a person propounding lesser vehicle tenets who does not assert self-knowers, but does assert truly established external objects. So, yeah, we're basing it on Panchen Lobson Choki Gelson's text, The Presentation of Tenets. This is the textbook of Sarah J. Monastery. So, the main point here is they do assert truly established external objects. So they don't split selflessness or subtle selflessness of phenomenon, selflessness of person is different. Sorry, subtle selflessness and the subtle selflessness of person are asserted to be equivalent. They don't accept selflessness of phenomena because they accept there is a valid base that is the self of phenomena. And so there are 18 sub-schools of Vaibhashika, and one of them, the followers of Vatsiputra, they say the selflessness of a person is empty of being permanent, unitary, and independent. But they do not accept that selfless of a person is the emptiness of being self-sufficient, substantially existent, because they accept a self-sufficient, substantially existent self that is inexpressible even in terms of being one entity with or different entity from the aggregates and being permanent or impermanent. So they don't accept that there is a self you can find that is permanent. They accept that the self is changing. and they accept it's not one, it's this collection of the aggregates, and they accept it's not independent. It's not like a permanent unit and independent can be used in terms of pilot. So the yeah, so the basically the controller, they don't accept that it is a independent self-controlling the aggregates. And of these, yeah, they hold the coarsest view, basically the sort of Great Exposition school. They say there is a self of phenomena. If you break phenomena down, you find a part that is that phenomena. They accept these part as particles, basically. So then we move slightly more subtly and we'll go to the Sutra school, or the Sautantrika school. And they're defined as a person propounding lesser vehicle tenets who accepts both self-knowers and external objects. So the difference between Sutra school, an upholder of the Sutra school and the upholder of the Vajrayana, the Great Exposition school, it depends on whether they accept self-knowers or not. And that's in terms of a consciousness that knows itself. And it's to do with how they view the way memory exists. It's not related to emptiness, it's to do with their sort of explanation of the mind. So the way the Sutra school asserts selflessness is there is two. There's a coarse and a subtle selflessness of person. So their coarse selflessness of person is the same as the Great Exposition school. It's the person being empty of being permanent unit and independent. But then they say there's this subtle selflessness of person, which is the emptiness of being self-sufficient, substantially existent. And this, so whereas the last one was sort of the permanent unit and independence, like the pilot controlling the aggregates, the pilot that flies the plane. So, permanent unit and independent refers to the king and his retinue, essentially. There is someone separate that controls everything, but he's kind of involved. The self-sufficient, substantially existent self is this pilot and the plane, if I get the analogies right. Where it's in the aggregates, but you control them. So they're saying that this person doesn't exist. So the Sutra school basically says there's no self of person to be found, but they accept self of phenomena, the same as these Great Expositions. They say there are these partless particles you can find. If you break an object down enough, there's a particle that it's made up of. And then the mind-only school, the Chittamatra. So they are defined as being a person propounding great vehicle tenets who does not accept external objects, but does assert truly established self-knowers. So the way they assert selflessness, the selfless as a person is the same as Sutra school. Their core selflessness of person is permanent unity and independent, not being empty, being permanent unity and independent. And their subtle selflessness of person is being empty of being self-sufficiently substantially existent. And then they have a selflessness of phenomena. This is where it's different. They've expanded from just the person and they now view phenomena. So they say the selflessness of phenomena is the emptiness that is a form and the value cognized apprehending that form and the emptiness of being different substances. So here, mind only, yeah. So they don't have a coarse selflessness of phenomena, they just have this subtle selflessness of phenomena. And this is because they accept this consciousness, the Alaya Vinaya, the storehouse consciousness. And to mind only school, this exists. This is the In the definition of a mind-only school practitioner, they assert truly established self-knowers. That's this self-known consciousness that truly can be truly established. And it's the basis of the imputation of a person. So they say the person is imputed on this consciousness. And then phenomena lack inherent, then the ignorance of viewing phenomena. I think so. It's a bit of a confusing point for me. Still not very clear. Mind only is explained to be the hardest school to understand. It's also why it's taught the least, because it's not the highest view, so most people don't focus on it, and it's incredibly complicated to understand. So if you're not going to hold it as your tenet system, it's a lot of time for not much reason for lay people. So this selflessness, yeah. So they say we view phenomena as being distant and cut off from the mind. So we think this mala is distant and cut off. It's totally separate from this storehouse consciousness. But they say this is a misunderstanding. And this mala is actually related to this storehouse consciousness. Because I call it a mala based on previous imprints that come from this storehouse consciousness. So in that way, they're not different substances. Everything's coming from this storehouse consciousness. But I don't have my notes from when Geshe taught this, or when Geshe taught the Lekshin Yingpo, Essence of True Eloquence, where we covered the mind-only section. But yeah, this is an incredibly complicated point that I'm still not sure on how it exists, how they view things. So they say you have this ignorance of thinking things are distant and cut off, and that's what causes you to suffer. They're separate from the mind. That's the main point. And then if you go to the middle way school, the Madhyamika, so they're defined as a person propounding great vehicle tenets who does not assert true establishment even conventionally. So mind only say that conventionally this storehouse consciousness exists from, in this kind of way, and it can be kind of truly established in a conventional manner. Whereas middle way is saying that's wrong. There's nothing that can be truly established from it is existing from its own side, even in the conventional sense. So you'll see as you progress through the four schools, essentially they increase in subtlety. You start with a very coarse view of Vaibhashikas, and then Sutra go a little more subtle with how they say, well, this is the subtle selfness of the person. And then mind only introduce a bit more subtlety by introducing the selfness as phenomena. And then middle way expand on this and go slightly more subtle with the storehouse consciousness. So obviously the two schools of middle way philosophy, there's the autonomy and the consequent school. The reason they're divided is based on how they apply reasoning. So the autonomy say you have to realize emptiness through autonomous reasons, where you say stuff like, say the syllogism, sound is impermanent because it is a product. Okay, so that to the autonomy school, that is an autonomous reason that's valid on its own, and you use a reasoning like that to understand emptiness. But for the Prasangika, the consequent school, they say, sorry, I might mix that up. So they would say because sound is a product, it is necessarily impermanent. Because a consequence of being impermanent, a consequence of being a product is being impermanent. The division between the two in the definition is quite unclear. It's mainly based on how they explain getting to this definition of this realization of emptiness. But then there's very subtle differences in how they view emptiness. So we'll start off with autonomy, the Svatantrika Majjhimika. So they can be divided into two: the yogic autonomy, the Yogacara Svatantrika, and the Sutra autonomy, the Svatantrika Svatantrika. This is basically because they take some of the lower schools' interpretation and they improve it, modifying them. So the yogic, so they both have the same view of selflessness as a person. The core selflessness of a person is the person being empty of being permanent, unitary, and independent. And the subtle selflessness of a person is the person being empty of being self-sufficiently, substantially existent. But then it's this selflessness of phenomena where the divisions come again. So for the yogic autonomy school, they say the core selflessness of phenomena is the form and the valid cognized apprehending that form's emptiness of being different substances. So it's the same as the subtle selflessness of phenomena for the mind-only school. And their subtle selflessness of phenomena, the yogic autonomy school, is the emptiness of true existence of all phenomena. But for the Sutra autonomy school, they do not posit a selflessness of a coarse selflessness of phenomena, and their subtle selflessness of phenomena is the emptiness of true existence of all phenomena. So it's basically because the Sutra school don't accept selflessness of phenomena. That's why they don't have a coarse selflessness of phenomena. And then finally, the consequence school. So their selflessness of a person is different to all the other schools. So the core selflessness of person for the consequence school is the person's so that is the same as the subtle selflessness of person for all the other schools. The core selflessness of person for consequence school is the person being empty of self-sufficient substantially existence, or empty of being self-sufficient substantially existent. And the subtle selflessness of person is the emptiness of true existence, or the person's emptiness of true existence. And then the selflessness of phenomena. The coarse selflessness of phenomena for the consequent school is the emptiness of a gross object composed of partless particles and the valid cognized apprehending it being different substances. And the subtle selflessness of phenomena is the emptiness of true existence of the aggregates. Which we can say the emptiness of true existence is the emptiness of inherent existence, yeah. So there's the difference between the two, between this autonomy and the consequent school and how they assert the subtle selfness of the person. So inherent existence of Prasangika for the consequent school is equivalent to existing from its own side. Yeah, true existence is the same as existing from its own side. So for Prasangika, we can say true existence and inherent existence are the same thing. But for the autonomy school, true existence is equivalent to existence in a manner of objective mode of subsistence without being posited through the force of its appearing to a non-defective awareness. So they're slightly different in that. So inherent existence is existing from its own side, whereas the Sartre they're saying it is the subsistence, its existence without being posited by a person. That's what's being referred to as true existence. So how in the Yogacara, in this mind-only school, they're saying that things exist because we impute them, or there's a mind there. And they're saying that true existence is going to step beyond that. This emptiness is empty of existing, even if a person's not imputed it. And yeah, this difference between true existence, inherent existence, is incredibly subtle and not very clearly explained. Um, there's a text I just need to find. Yeah, there's a text called "The Discussion Between Self-Grasping and the Wisdom Realizing Selflessness" by Lama Tsongkhapa. And this is the text is holiness says it is how he realized the difference between the two. And he said it took him 20 years. He was in his 40s when he began to understand the difference between the two. Um, yeah, I can't say I particularly understand the difference. I'm, yeah, so here we go. For the autonomy school, the two conceptions of self are differentiated by the way of the mode of apprehension and not by the way of observed object. Because through observing the basis, the person, and apprehending it to be truly established, is a conception of a self of phenomena. And through observing the basis, the person, and apprehending it to be self-sufficient and substantially existent, is a conception of the self of person. So they're saying that the two, the selfness of the self of person, the self of phenomena that are being refuted, is differentiated by way of by mode of apprehension, not the object itself. Whereas I think the consequent schools say the two selfnesses are differentiated by a way of basis of emptiness and not by the way of object of negation, because the refutation of the object of negation, true establishment upon the basis of the person, and the basis of the aggregates is the same. So basically, because for Prasangika, for consequent school, you are refuting the same thing, you cannot differentiate by object of negation. You are negating inherent existence. For whether it's the self of person or self of phenomenon, it's the same thing being negated. So they say it's the basis that's different, whether it's the aggregates and of all, and then all phenomena, or the person, this view of the self. And the subtle conceptions of self, yeah, Gishinamdak always says that the consequent school is the easiest to understand. It's very basic logic. It's actually really the sutra school and the consequent school are the easiest to understand. The difficulty comes in the realization. It's going from this conceptual understanding to a direct realization that's challenging. The two subtle conceptions of itself are differentiated by way of observed object and not by way of mode of apprehension, because observing the basis of the person and apprehending it to be truly established is posited as a subtle conception of the self of person. And observing the basis of imputation, the aggregates and so forth, and apprehending it to be truly established is posited as a subtle conception of the self of phenomena. So you see here, this is the consequent school. So basically, this is the difference in how the consequent school and the autonomy school differ as well. So for the consequent school, you divide the two the selfness of person and selfness of phenomena based on the observed object, the self or phenomena. For the autonomy school, you don't divide in that way. You divide by way of the mode of apprehension, because this is because of their different understanding of I just need to find this table. Yeah, so this is because there's a subtle difference in how they explain the subtle selfness as a person. It's because the consequent school is that goes a step further to the emptiness of inherent existence. So for them, the emptiness of true existence. So what they view as the subtle selfness of the person is different. So it's not that the object is different, but it's the way you apprehend it is different between the two. And the selfness of a person and selfness of phenomena, the two subtle forms of them for autonomy are different, but they are the same for the consequent school because they're both the emptiness of inherent existence. So yeah, that's again a very difficult division to understand. Um, yeah, so Buddha can only be attained through the Prasangika school's view. This does depend actually. So you see, you can become an arhat with the realization of emptiness according to the Sutra school and the Great Exposition school. That's enough. But then for full Buddhahood, you can, you need the Great Vehicle tenets, you need the Mahayana tenets. So it can be based on either actually. It can be mind only or Prasangika. It can be mind only or Majjhimika, sorry, uh, consequent, middle way. It doesn't need to be consequence because Buddha Palita held the consequence school. Bhavavika held the autonomy school view, but it's still accepted to be a Buddha. He's an artist still. The Basically it's a bit of a complicated thing, but the the selflessness of a person is the same for all the schools. So that removes this is how you become an arhat by viewing the emptiness of the person. But then if you look, the emptiness of phenomena is what a Buddha holds. That's the step beyond. So you see, the subtle selfness of phenomena is the same as the core selfness of phenomena for the mind-only subtle selfness of phenomena is the same as the autonomy schools core selfness of phenomena. So you kind of it's progressively washing away the stains. So they actually say, as a result of holding the realization of the mind only, you're on the path for Buddhahood. It's enough of realization, just like constantly meditating that way. But then as you reach the end of the meditation, it clicks and you realize you go a step beyond. And you then seemingly automatically generate the view of the middle way. Because this, as you slowly reduce the concepts and wash away the stains of grasping to inherent exist or grasping to even the form and the valid cognized apprehending form of being empty, being different substances, you are still kind of clinging to a person almost. This kind of it depends on this self, and that view eventually falls apart. But yeah, it's explained more clearly in the Vajrayana texts that you can have the full realizations of Buddhahood in the Vajrayana with either the mind only or the middle way school views. It doesn't need to be middle way only. It's said it's much more clear in Tantra that you will, through the practice of Tantra, naturally progress to middle way from mind only. It's clearer in that it's more explicitly stated. The text, especially the commentaries, are a lot more explicit that you can hold. I think Longchenpa, I think, explains this, and I haven't seen any of. I haven't read into Tsongkhapa's works yet, but it probably is there. I haven't seen it, but I have a recollection of Longchenpa saying you can start with the middle, the mind-only view, and then through the practice of generation and completion stage, you will automatically, like that, hold the middle way view when you realize Buddhahood. It's maybe not like instant. There's maybe a progression in the two, but essentially, right at the last moment, you realize, oh, it's not quite there, and because you have such perfect practice, it happens in a moment that you realize the emptiness of inherent existence. So the two stages, yes, that probably is a good point to move on to the final part of the text. So, in the Foundation of All Good Qualities, Lama Tsongkhapa ends with this praise of the vajrayana, where he says, having become a pure vessel by training the general path, so that refers to everything we've covered until now, please bless me to enter the holy gateway of the fortunate ones, supreme Vajra vehicle. At the time, the basis of accomplishing the two attainments is keeping pure vows of Samaya. As I become firmly convinced of this, please bless me to protect these vows and pledges like my life. Then, having realized the importance of the two stages, the essence of the Vajrayana, by practicing with great energy, never giving up the 4 sessions, please bless me to realize the teachings of the Holy Guru. Like that, may the Guru show the noble path and spiritual friends who practice lifelong lives. Please bless me to pass by completely all out and any hindrances. In all my lives, never separate from perfect gurus, I enjoy the magnificent Dharma. By completing the qualities, stages, and paths, I quickly attain the state of Vajradhara. So essentially there, the final 2 verses are a dedication verse. But then before that is this brief cover of Tantra where Tsongkhapa doesn't go into much detail, because that's not all the Lamrim texts I've read by Tsongkhapa and Atisha's Lamrim, I think, as well, basically all do the same thing. They teach the common path of sutra, and then at the very end say, this is why you need to practice Tantra. So essentially, the practice of the generation stage is the 2 stages of the generation and completion stage. The generation stage combines karma binding and special insight in a single session. So normally when we practice, in the sutra way, we do it like we've done in the previous sessions. You sit, you practice karma binding, then you exit that state, you do the analysis, you hold the conclusion in a kind of similitude. It's almost like it's practicing to have this union of karma binding and special insight. And you slowly practice, and then once you've developed, once you realize karma binding and you have this single point concentration, you hold these conclusions in a single pointed concentration. But we have to practice them in separate sessions, essentially. We start karma binding, then we stop and we enter the special insight analysis. And we have to alternate between the two, and gradually it becomes more subtle and you don't notice the separation. When you practice the generation stage, you are practicing both simultaneously. That's the main difference. And then the completion stage is a step subtler. And you use the really subtle minds to have a much more powerful effect. And it's a level. The difference is basically you use it in the generation stage. You still go beyond a mind of the desire bell. So when we practice until you have realizations of karma binding, you have a mind of the desire bell, and then eventually, as you attain the jhanas, you have a mind of the form and formless realms. But these take sort of training to get these minds. And then through the practice of Tantra, you use these subtle minds to use the mind of the form and formless realm to realize emptiness much faster. And that's why it can be done in 21 lifetimes compared to 3 countless great eons. But Yeah, it's everything. Yeah, so and also at the same time, the generation stage, especially when you generate the mandala and yes, and the yidam, you simultaneously are meditating on the selflessness of person and the selflessness of phenomenon. Whereas for most of the time, during sutra methods, well, all the time, you alternate. You spend a session meditating on the selflessness of person, and then you spend a session meditating on the selflessness of phenomenon. Because you have to identify the object of refutation. And they have a different object of refutation, yeah? Or at least for the Prasangika view. We have a different object of refutation, so it's done separately. But part of the unique method of Tantra is you meditate on the two in a single session. So you can remove the stains much faster. Contradict what the Prasangika says in which way? The selflessness isn't different. You know, the self even in Tantra, the selflessness is still the emptiness of inherent existence for both. And we're saying what the difference between the two is the object that's been refuted. The difference is for the common sutra methods of meditation, you have to focus on one object at a time. You would either spending a session focused on the self, a person, or the self of phenomena. And that's how you generally train. You alternate between the two, you apply the reasoning to one. But then there's this unique feature of Tantra. Now, in the same meditation session, as a beginner especially, you maybe start with selfless of phenomena and then the selfless of person in Tantra. But you, as you develop, they are done in the same session at the same time. And that's the subtle difference. That you are doing the exact same meditation as you do in sutra. You're just doing it at a different time, essentially. In sutra, it takes a lot longer when you're doing them separately. In the vajrayana, you've compressed it into one single meditation session. And that's why it's so much more efficient. So we're just about done for today. So yeah, we mainly just covered the difference between the four schools and touched on the final verses on the Vajrayana. But another time, or maybe next week, yeah, next week should be fine. We can do a session on meditating on emptiness and how we apply the reasons, the logic of dependent arising. Uh, so just as a very auspiciousness for anyone that wants to catch up on the recording, especially, if you've not covered emptiness before, it's quite an overwhelming session. And so the main logical point that we're looking for here is this dependent arising. This is the ultimate the not the ultimate nature, this is the ultimate meaning of the Buddha's teachings, the essential point. That phenomena and the person lack inherent existence because they are dependently arisen. So if it is a functioning thing, if it is an impermanent phenomenon, it necessarily arises from previous causes and conditions. And those previous causes and conditions arise from previous causes and conditions in a sort of endless chain. So if it exists in dependence on something, it exists in dependence on its previous causes and conditions, how can it exist from its own side? It can't. And then we also say the self made up of parts. you know, um, we take like mala again. It's not just this one bead makes up the mala. It's the collection of all 108 and the guru bead as a string. It's made up of these parts. So because it exists in dependence on parts and the collection of their parts, it cannot exist from its own side. So each then bead can be divided down further, into its top, bottom half, its quarters, and so on. You can constantly divide into pieces. And this is where the lower schools do accept there is eventually a particle that you can find. But the Prasangika do not accept this. They do not accept partless particles because they say even if you reach the most subtle particle, you can still divide into its north, south, east, and west. Then its north, south, east, and west can be divided again, and so on. So you can apply that logic to both permanent and impermanent phenomena. So a good one for permanent phenomena is uncomposed space, so empty space in a room. It exists in dependence on the absence of something. There's got to be nothing there. But also it's made up of empty space in the north, in the south, the east, the west, and so on. And then finally, we have this dependence upon mere mental imputation. That's the third level of dependent arising. It's the most subtle. And we say this is a mala because we have imputed the name mala on it. If we as a society decided this wasn't called a mala, this was called a table, it wouldn't change how it exists. The name would have changed, but that's all. So its function, counting mantras as they do this, is imputed function. There's nothing inherent about this wood bead that means it's for counting, or it's going to be called a wooden bead. It's an imputed term. In the same way, the self is imputed on the collection of the aggregates. There is no self to be found in amongst the aggregates. It's not in any individual one of them, but it's not separate from them. It's just what we call this collection. This body and mind. The collection of the two is what we call my body and my mind is what we call Thomas. There's a good example. Shechen Rabjan Rinpoche was teaching recently in Levabling in France, and he was telling a story of when he was in Portugal. He was leading a drugche and doing personal retreats, but he went to a local gym in the town. And when he registered, he thought, well, Vabjam is no good as a name to give because it's confusing for Portuguese people. So he asked one of the students, what's the most similar name in Portuguese? He said, oh, it's Roberto. So he registered in the gym as Roberto and he told everyone he's called Roberto. And he said one day he was exercising away on the machine and someone's shouting, Roberto, Roberto. And he's thinking, who's that person calling for? And then he remembered that Roberto was the name he'd given himself. And he said there was no difference. There was no different, he wasn't a different person or anything. It was just the name imputed on Shechen Rabjan Rinpoche, or Roberto, was different. There was no inherentness to this Roberto. It was just an imputation. So, yeah, with that, we'll conclude there for today, and we'll next week do a meditation on emptiness as a sort of auspicious ending to this sort of Lamrim topic. And then we'll see where we go from there in the new year. So we'll end with the dedication prayers. Dagi Jene Sape Gewadi Tendando Wa Kunla Gampeda Kipa Jetson Losanda Bai Tempe Ningpo Vingu Selze Show Gangwe Rawe Kowe Sinkanso Pendang Dewa Malu Jomweni Chenrezi Wang Tenzin Katsori Japesite Badu Tengyuchi. Then the three principal aspects of the path: renunciation, bodhicitta, and emptiness. Nejon Sampa Rinpoche Make Panam Kegyuchi Kipa Nyamba Mepaya Gonye Gondu Pelwa Sho Janju Simcho Rinpoche Make Panam Kegyuchi Kipa Nyamba Mepai Gonye Gondu Pelwa Sho Tony Tawa Rinpoche Make Panam Kegyuchi Kipa Nyamba Mepai Gonye Gondu Pelwa Sho. As long as space remains, as long as my greatest remain, till may to remain, dispel the suffering of all my greatest. Yeah, so thank you very much for coming and see you next time.